Open this. How dare they?
I have no idea.
I take that as a personal insult.
7 o'clock. Keep my phone handy for the babysitter.
Privatized
in case,
development for the
something
public
goes
sector.
happens. Sonya's
National
in
League of
Anaheim,
Cities.
California.
Yeah,
She's at a conference. She
got some,
texted me. She goes, "This is bad."
from
And then
the-
it was notice came up on her phone
Vanderbilt.
that said,
All she did was just
Here you go.
rearrange when I take all these horrible, deleted
Right.
some
I'll
of
be
them.
at the meeting next
or
week.
assembly is
Yeah.
about to take
I'm not
place
going
at
to
the
be at the meeting. And we finally got our
Convention
design
Center.
standards
Use caution.
All said and done,
And now
it's
we're thinking we need to.
about this, like this, which is,
Oh, never mind.
Post-election assembly or they're rioting. All these different places are rioting about the election. So,
Things get better.
That's all right. Every conversation is good conversation.
I've got 7 o'clock.
I learned something.
Pretty good.
be in trouble.
You're in. We got a quorum. We
I
got a
can read the
quorum.
proclamation.
Ready?
Good evening, everyone. This is the Board of Mayor and Alderman meeting for November 10th. We will start by rising for a moment of silent prayer, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item is approval of the agenda. We have a bunch of business items.
Yes, we do.
Have any changes? I move to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next item is the mayor's report, and we have a proclamation under this category that Allison will read.
Yes, sir. Whereas the town of Farragut celebrates our local small businesses and the contributions they make to our local economy and community, according to the United States Small Business Administration, there are currently 28.8 million small businesses in the United States that represent 99.7% of all businesses with employees in the United States and are responsible for 63% of the net new jobs created over the past 20 years. Whereas small businesses employ over 49% of all businesses with employees in the United States. Whereas 89% of the consumers in the United States agree that small businesses contribute positively to the local community by supplying jobs and generating tax revenue. Whereas 87% of the consumers in the United States agree that the small businesses are critical to the overall economic health of the United States. And whereas 93% of consumers in the United States agree that it is important for people to support the small businesses that they value in their community. Whereas the town of Farragut supports our local businesses that create jobs, boost our local economy, and preserve our neighborhoods. And whereas advocacy groups, as well as public and private organizations across the country, have endorsed the Saturday after Thanksgiving as Small Business Saturday. Now, therefore, Ralph McGill, Mayor of the town of Farragut, does hereby proclaim November 26th as Small Business Saturday and urge the residents of our community and communities across the country to support small businesses and merchants on Small Business Saturday and throughout the year.
Thank you. Is that going to be in the newspaper or what?
I can forward it to the news. Are you talking about the advertisement for Small Business Saturday?
Well, the proclamation.
I can forward it to the papers.
Next item then is Citizens Forum,
I have no one signed up.
and we move on to approval of minutes from October the 27th.
If no one
I've
has any-
reviewed the minutes and they all seem to be in order, so I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So we move on to these business items. The first one is approval of fire services agreement with Rural Metro of Tennessee.
Thank you, Mayor. This agenda item is to approve an agreement for fire, emergency, and environmental hazardous materials response between the town of Farragut and Rural Metro. Here in Knox County, we're a little unusual from the rest of the state of Tennessee, where we have a subscription service for our fire service and emergency service personnel. It's been in this way for over 30 years, been in Knox County and in the town of Farragut. And in that time, Rural Metro has been the provider for these services. Over the past couple of years, Rural Metro has added a fire station in the Choteau area, which helped with the overall coverage of the Farragut area as well. They provided and purchased a new fire pumper for the Campbell Station Fire Station and moved their fire headquarters to that station as well. There were several other enhancements that they were able to do over the last couple of years, which helped them receive an upgrade in their ISO rating up to a community protection class of 3. The higher that level is, usually the lower your insurance premiums are for residential and commercial type buildings. The terms of this agreement are for 5 years and allow for either party to terminate the contract with 6 months written notice. It also sets a minimum requirement for hiring certified personnel, and it also establishes that calls for service throughout the town shall not exceed 6 minutes and 20 seconds from the time of receipt of a call to arrival on scene by the first unit with firefighting capabilities at least 90% of the time. Rural Metro will also be required to maintain an ISO rating of 4 or better and ensure that at least one paramedic EMT be stationed on each engine company within the town. Obviously, Rural Metro, the way they are funded then is through subscription service through the community at large. And so what's attached to your agreement is the rates that are currently effective for the 12-month period. It also calls in the contract that the increases can be no more than 3% per year for residential subscribers and 5% a year for commercial subscribers. And there's also enhanced reporting requirements as well as part of this agreement. I'll be happy to try to answer any questions for you. Chief Jerry Harnish is here as well, and he certainly can answer any specific questions you may have about Rural Metro and their operations and what all they provide to the town.
Do you all want to have a say in this, or is everything okay with you?
I believe we're fine, sir.
Okay.
My question would be, is this agreement materially the same as our prior agreement with them? Is there anything different about it?
I would actually say this agreement is much more enhanced than the one we had prior to this. Some of the things I just mentioned about making sure that run times are in a certain period of time, that the reporting requirements in the contract, making sure that there are minimum qualifications for their personnel that are on a fire truck, that are driving a fire truck throughout town. So all those things included in this are enhancements over what we've had in the past.
So you see it as a net improvement over the prior agreement?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Can I ask, what's the percentage of Farragut homeowners that subscribe? I know that you obviously would wish for 100%, but what do you guys end up usually with?
Chief, if you can,
Would
come
you
to the
please?
microphone
Yeah.
for the record. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Jerry Harnish, Fire Chief, Rural Metro Fire Department. Our address here is 160 North Campbell Station Road. Honestly, I'm not sure what the participation rate is in the town. I do know the Member Services Department tracks that information. For Knox County, generally, the figure is around 52%. It has been higher in Farragut because participation is typically higher in neighborhoods where there are higher levels of education, higher levels of income. I can get the precise number for you if you'd like, because I know we do track it.
Well, and I guess what I'm really asking is, whatever that number, if it's not 100%, it's certainly our desire is to get it close to 100% as possible. Is there something the town can be doing on our end to make that, improve the participation rate?
Yes, I believe there are some things the town could do. probably the appropriate thing for me to do is to start a staff discussion with Mr. Smoke. Residential participation is very much driven by the cost of insurance. And so where homeowners have a great advantage in having a subscription to keep their insurance down, typically they look at the numbers and do the obvious thing. Commercial properties very often are not driven by the insurance industry in the way that residential property is. And so it may be in the town's interest to adopt an ordinance on how the fire department can charge those properties in the event that they have an emergency. The purpose of that kind of thing would be to make it more expensive for a commercial property to opt out. But before the town actually took any kind of action, like I said at the first, I think that's probably the basis for staff discussion.
Thank you.
Any more discussion?
So what do we need to do to promote that staff discussion or ensure that that happens?
Well, I think myself and Chief Harnish can get together and have some further conversations about, what it is that would be a more specific, I guess, thoughts on ordinance processes or what they may see out there from their perspective. And I can bring that back to the board at a future date and see how the board feels about moving forward in that direction.
Okay, so can we note that it was determined that we would have that discussion and that staff will report back to the Board of Mayor and Aldermen?
Got that in the minutes? Yes, sir. We have it in the minutes.
All right, thank you.
So we need a vote, I think.
I'm going to move to approve an agreement between the Town of Farragut and Rural Metro of Tennessee for fire emergency and environmental hazardous materials response.
Second?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next one is approval of fire prevention and public fire education services agreement with Rural Metro of Tennessee.
Mayor, this is also an agreement with Rural Metro to help us and provide the town with services for fire prevention and public education. As you know, we have a fire marshal. Dan Johnson's here tonight, and Dan works through Rural Metro, but he has an office here at Town Hall. He provides, as well as Colin Cumesty, who is also a fire prevention officer. They provide great services for us in plans review, commercial building inspections. They do fire prevention training and educational services throughout the town. They're basically anything fire related when it comes to safety and inspections of buildings. There are folks that we hire to do that for us. This contract would provide that the fire marshal provide at least 90% of his regular working hours in the performance of fire prevention and education services in the town of Farragut, and would also include the plans review, safety inspections, the programs, and the fire and safety procedures for town facilities and equipment. Terms of this agreement are also for 5 years, with the end of the term being June 30th, 2021. The agreement also specifies the town will pay Rural Metro $62,000. Excuse me, it actually have an error in the report. It's actually going to be $64,715.60 in FY17 with 3%.
Sorry, can you repeat that number? I'm
Yes,
sorry.
ma'am. It's $64,715.60 in FY17 with 3% annual increases on July 1st of each year. The contract quarterly rates that are in the contract are actually consistent with the number I just gave you, the $64,000 number. So there's no changes that need to be made to that contract. It was just an error on my part in writing it down on the report. So I would recommend approval of this contract as well, and I'll be happy to try to answer any questions. And of course, Chief Harnish and also Dan Johnson are both here to answer any questions the board may have for them as well.
To clarify, David, Dan Johnson is an employee of the town, correct?
No, sir. He is an employee of Rural Metro. So Rural Metro pays his salary and handles all of his insurance and everything else. We just pay a large portion of his salary based on the time he spends here in the town of Farragut. He has other duties and responsibilities outside of working just for the town as well.
And so, could we, as part of that discussion with Rural Metro and staff, look at how Mr. Johnson might be the point person in that effort to increase participation by the citizenry of Farragut in the Rural Metro services?
Chief, is that? Yeah. We can try to work out any kind of arrangement or agreement, whatever we think would be the best way to get the word out, to get more people to subscribe, I think would certainly be a great effort. And if Dan has some time to do that as he's out in the community, then certainly we'll take advantage of that.
Okay, thank you.
Is 3% an annual increase? Is that just typically that's what's done?
Well, I think it's something that we've talked to certainly Chief Harnish about. I think that's and when you look at typical increases for municipal governments and what they pay employees and things like that, that's a relatively consistent number. It could be higher, it could be lower some years, but overall 5-year period, I would think that would be actually relatively conservative and consistent.
Okay. I move to approve the agreement between the Town of Farragut and Rural Metro of Tennessee for fire prevention and public education services.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item is approval of professional services agreement for legislative services with Lane Communications.
Thank you, Mayor. Obviously, the board knows we've been talking about this for several years now, that cities across the state of Tennessee have really been struggling with some of the legislation that has been tossed down from the state that would hinder our ability to do the different services and provide the different responsibilities that we'd like to have for our communities. There are hundreds and actually a couple thousand bills filed every single year in the legislature. So trying to keep up with those and monitor those takes a considerable amount of time. We found that the last year that it was very instrumental and helpful to us to hire someone to help us to monitor the bills and to really have boots on the ground in Nashville consistently every single day at the Capitol. So we sent out an RFQ, request for qualifications, had 5 different firms respond to help us with this legislative services contract. Lane Communications was the most responsive and qualified of all the providers that responded to us. They have locations in both Farragut and Nashville. They've been in government relations for over 30 years. They've represented both the coal mining and Tennessee Oil and Gas Associations, and they worked effectively for the town of Farragut last year. They will be responsible for doing research of all applicable bills that are filed that affect municipalities. They'll develop strategies regarding these legislative issues, arrange meetings with legislators, provide committee testimony, and monitor all legislation and provide weekly updates to the town of Farragut during the session. All this would be for a not to exceed amount of $10,000 annually for a 3-year term. With that, I would recommend approval of this MOU or contract with Lane Communications, and I'd be happy to try to answer any questions. Chuck Lane is also here, and he'd be happy to try to answer any questions the board may have as well.
Would you like to say anything?
Well, I introduced myself, how's that?
That's good.
But then if you have a question, I'll be glad to answer. I'm Chuck Lane. I live in Farragut, I live in Fox 10, and I have an office in Nashville. And I was honored to represent Farragut last year. It was really an interesting experience. There's a lot going on in Nashville, as David said, and when you got all those bills, we kind of got a formula. We go through every bill that looks like it might affect Farragut, give it to David and his staff, and ask them to kind of hone it down to the bills that really seem important, and then we just keep an eye on those the whole time. We had some very effective use last year by doing that, some things that would hurt Farragut. If you've got a second, I can kind of tell you how we got in this position, but
I think we can spare a second.
I would very much like to hear that.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Because I don't hear me, so I was want to make sure. I'm going to say 6 or 8 years ago, fairly recently, the state went Republican. This state had always been a Democratic state, and the Republicans were in the suburbs, and the Democrats were rural. And well, I guess it was 6 years ago, 8 years ago, and the rural was Democrat, and the cities were Democrat, and areas like this were Republican, and then of course East Tennessee was Republican. And when Obama came in, all the rural people that were Democrat went Republican, so we suddenly became a very strong Republican state. And so all our legislature is what they call a supermajority. There's so many Republicans that I hate to say it, but Democrats, in essence, are irrelevant to the process. They don't even have to have their votes. There's so few. Well, when that happened, the Democrats, I think there's one rural, after this last election this week, there's one rural Democrat in East Tennessee, to give you sort of an idea. And so the Democrats are in the four major cities. So the Republicans have just been every year hitting the four major cities on de-annexation, annexation, all the different things that rules, regulations, those kind of things are all under fire because Republicans don't like rules, regulations, or taxes or those services typically. So they're all under fire. So it's been, like I say, almost 8 years, and probably 6 years. But anyway, the collateral of the blow-ups in the cities are starting to hit towns like Farragut. And so it takes vigilance to stay on top of it. And as David said, there's 2,000 bills a year. And who's going to watch them? So that's our job, is to watch them and get back with your staff and make sure that we're covering the things. The mayor's come over 2 or 3 times. I minimize the amount of time that you guys have to come over. We handle it. If we have to testify before a committee, we do that for you unless we really feel like you need to be there. And they were really good last year to come over a few times that we felt like. Every now and then you need to see the person, you know. I can represent you so well, but, you know, they want to see the mayor. So we were able to. So, any questions?
So, is this, would your role be as a lobbyist? Is that what we call a lobbyist?
Yes. I'll register as a lobbyist. And Roxanne Riley works with me, so there's 2 of us, and we'll both register as lobbyists for the town of Farragut, which is required.
Do you represent any other towns?
No, I don't. I kind of want to, but we're just kind of getting into this edge of it. As David said, I represent a lot of different I have some national clients too, so I represent a lot of different ones. But you know, I live here.
Yeah.
I was here before there was a Farragut. I lived here, and I was here part of the Citizens for Home Rule part, and so, you know, it just seemed like something I thought I might like to do, and then we really enjoyed it. So.
That's good. We certainly need it. I can't believe there's 2,000 bills in 4 months. That seems rather
It's
impressive.
amazing. It's amazing. Come over. I'll take you around. It's someday. Bring your tennis shoes because it's a lot of running. But it's amazing. And you know, we hear all these bad things. You hear about the guy that had the affair and all of that, and so everybody thinks it's the wild, wild west over there. But really, it's 133 people, and just like you guys, you could go to Ingalls and pick out 133 people, and you'll find somebody to take a bribe. You find somebody that might cheat on their spouse, but most all of them are there because they want to be, because they want to serve, and they're good people, and so we know, and then so it really works out well. But it is a lot to go through
In a short period of time, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as Mark Twain said, no man is safe when the legislature is in session.
That's right.
And,
Neither is your billfold.
Maybe it's good that they only meet for 4 months of the year.
Absolutely.
We're there. Roxanne and I are there, and my wife works with us too, and we're there when they're there. So they go over on Monday usually, come home on Thursday or Friday, and we have a place right downtown, right across half a block from the Legislative Plaza. And so we're there when they're there. So we're representing your interests the entire time. We don't get caught napping, for lack of a better word.
And David, speaking for staff, do you see value in this?
I see a ton of value in it, sir. We last year, it is difficult as I discussed earlier to keep up with these bills, especially toward the end of the session. That's when everything starts rolling through committees. They'll push off things for 2 or 3 weeks in a row. You think you need to go to Nashville, the next thing you know, they're voting on it. And so it's very difficult to make sure that you're there and you're able to, unless you are in a city in the Nashville area, to be able to go as much as you possibly can. And so it's helpful. It was very helpful to have Chuck and Roxanne last year. There was a couple of bills that they helped us out on quite a bit, get changed up for us to be able to help minimize the collateral damage, as Chuck said earlier, that could have occurred if they got passed the way they did.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
So, need a vote.
Well, I move to approve a professional services agreement between the Town of Farragut and Lane Communications for legislative services for a amount not to exceed $10,000.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item then is approval of memorandum of understanding between the Town of Farragut and the Farragut West Knox Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Mayor. The town and the Chamber of Commerce have been working together for almost 30 years. In fact, the town helped start the chamber several years ago. In that time frame, over the last few years, we've come up with a MOU, or a memorandum of understanding, to help solidify that relationship, to help solidify the things that the chamber does for us as an Admiral Elite member of their chamber, and then also some of the things that we will certainly do for the chamber as well. In this MOU, this is an update to what we have done with the chamber, again, 5 years ago. And they recognize us as an Admiral Elite member. That's in your packet. You can see all the different benefits that are provided as part of that. We get to go to the events, and we're prominently displayed at those events, and we're basically the lead sponsor on all those events. Some of the things that the business development side of things that the chamber will work on for us as the town are to promote local businesses through their events and marketing, communicate and coordinate economic development activities with the Farragut Business Alliance. They'll continue to partner with the Tennessee Small Business Development Center to provide assistance to small business. They'll also assist prospective business owners on how to open a business in Farragut. They'll assist the town in recruitment of new retail and office businesses, and continue to increase the chamber membership base located here in the town. Our budget and this MOU calls for paying the chamber $15,000 per year over the next 5 years. Certainly, if there was a budget issue or something needed to happen that the town felt like it could not pay that anymore, there are termination clauses in this agreement that would allow the town to terminate immediately without cause, and pay them basically up through the time that we would terminate the contract. With that, I'll be happy to try to answer any questions. You've got Tim Williams, the chairman of the board of the chamber, Betty Cisco is the president of the chamber, and Julie Blaylock, all here to answer any questions in case the board has any of them. We did, by the way, we did take this to the Economic Development Committee, and they vetted this over the past couple of months, and they're in agreement with this and recommend approval as well. I know Alderman Pinchot sits on that committee and certainly could answer any questions from his perspective.
I'd like to make a comment in the fact that back in October at the EDC meeting, the chamber made a very complete presentation of what they've accomplished through the last 12 months, and I think it's in attachment A and B. So if you have any questions, a lot of that information is before you. But I was quite impressed with all the accomplishments, and in talking to them, I found that they have not had an increase in the amount of money we have given them for over 5 years. If I recall, it may have been 6 or 7 years, but I think it's long overdue that we give them a little bit more money than what we have been. So I am very excited about what they've accomplished and what they plan to do, and I would like to support them by seeing an increase in the amount that we give them each year. I don't think $15,000 is adequate.
So is that a motion?
I can make it a motion unless there's some more discussion.
I don't know that we can.
So would that be two different motions? Because one, we have to approve the memorandum of understanding, or is it we edit the memorandum of understanding is?
Well, certainly y'all need to can have more discussion about it, but we also need a number
Right.
that you'd like to put in there. But we could certainly just update the MOU with the number that you want to put in there, and we can get that changed up, and then I'm sure the chamber would be okay with receiving additional funds if that was something that the board wanted to provide. So.
I'd like to ask, I don't know who wants to answer this question, but with the additional funds, what does that bring? How does that help you?
I'm Betty Cisco, 508 Annandale, and I am the president of the Farragut West Knox Chamber. This is my 16th year, and I can certainly say that in the 16 years, the town has helped us for about 10 of those years, and we appreciate it so much. Needless to say, we certainly could use more money, and we would use it wisely, as each year we have increased everything that we've done for the town. We continue to increase it. One thing alone, and that is advertising, covers just about what we're doing right now with the 15. And needless to say, any other types of advertising we would do, any kind of work with you guys specifically. I'd like to see us work with something concerning brochures, perhaps, for signage, for anything that we could put in relocation packets that could make things more relative to those coming into town and coming by the chamber. We also, for the past 3 years, unplanned and unscheduled, we have done the small business Saturday. And we ordered this year a box of small business product to hand out, and we received another box. So now we have 2 boxes. Actually, we have 1.5 boxes, because I've already delivered a half a box of them. And
Allison's going to give me some more on Saturday. So
no, we don't need any more. In fact, we offered some to the FBA, but they didn't want any.
well, I would like to help with that.
Oh, okay,
It's a
come on.
great way to touch base with our business.
Sure it is.
Yeah.
I took some into Dixie Lee, as a matter of fact, and they were thrilled. It's what a great way to take your bottles out and your wine and your beer and your whatever. And they loved it. And they said, bring more. And I said, well, I got a few more I'll bring you, so I will. But all businesses have enjoyed them. And I've done it each year. And I find it very interesting. It's a great opportunity alone just to talk to the business people and find out how their business is doing and what they think of us and what they think of the town of Farragut. You know me, I've never been afraid to ask a question, and I'm still not. And because you never learn what to fix unless you ask what's wrong with it. So that's one of the things that we want to do, is get very much more involved with that as well. And then any other type of advertising we can do. Another thing that we have found ourselves getting more of, which has been kind of interesting because we've kind of changed things up, we give away education grants to businesses that need to have training done within their own business to help an employee become better at what they do. And we also do it for our students that come from Farragut High School. And we have 2 students a year, and we don't tell them, and we do it as a big surprise, like it wasn't going to happen, but it's going to happen. And we give them anywhere from $250 to $500 as a grant to give them money for school. And that's been so well received. And the students have been so grateful, and they're actually very helpful and actually do work, which is great. So that's another place that we could certainly use some additional funds that would help us out. As you know, we are not funded by anyone except our membership, and so it makes it really hard sometimes to make ends meet, but we've done it. And when I got here, they were $30,000 in the hole, and at least now we're above water, and that's good. So whatever we can do extra, and things that we come up with along the years, as I said earlier, we've done so many more things than we did when we first started working with the town so closely for the grant that we were given, or the contract that we were given. We'll just continue to do more as we think of things to do. So with growth from all of us, the work's never going to stop.
Thank you, Betty.
I have a question, and that is, how long has the number been 15,000?
I believe for the last 5 years, it's been 15. I think before that, it was probably 12,500.
Yes.
For a couple years at least before that.
And then prior to that, for about 5 years, and sorry, I can't remember, but exactly, but it was 5,000, I believe. And but that was not considered a contract. It was just a grant that was given to us.
Betty, can you tell us, in a nutshell, is there anything different about this, or what is different about this memorandum of understanding than the last one that you had?
We didn't have one. This
no,
whole thing
we had
is.
one last year.
Well, actually it wasn't laid out this way at all. What I tried to do is the pages that you have that are highlighted, those are actually the things that we have done this year. We have done far more this year than we ever knew we would do. And so we started recording things better and keeping track of it so we could know exactly what we were doing. And I must admit, I was also surprised when I sat down and read it all, because it made a big difference in seeing numbers and seeing how they really are working for us.
Well, you guys are definitely tireless boosters for the town, and we really appreciate everything you do. So you are
We appreciate
a big
the
part of
town.
the fabric of the town, and
Thank you.
have made yourselves such.
One thing we started doing that we didn't do before is having our ambassador meetings here. And that is great exposure for people that are on committees, because they don't know. We know what's here, and we think everyone else should know what's here. We know that the museum is here, and we think everyone should know all about the museum, but they don't. And so when they come here, they find out about it. We also hold 2 meetings a year here for our new member orientation, and the museum is always happy to open up early for us so that we can show the people the museum as well. And it's just a great opportunity for the town to have people come in the door and see that they can do something besides get on the elevator and go get tags. So, of course, I get on the elevator.
I have
Anything
no further
else?
questions.
Yes? Did I hear something?
Other questions?
Oh,
Thank you, Betty.
okay.
If that being the case, I would like to make a motion that we change the annual sum from 15,000 to, let's say 18,000, which would be a 3% increase a year over the past 5 years or so, which would, I'm sure their expenses have increased, and I would think $3,000 would be sufficient to cover those increases.
Well, as a point of order, on the agenda, we have this motion, or this memorandum of understanding to approve. So I would like to make a motion that we approve this memorandum of understanding, and then we can consider your motion.
I'll second that, Bob.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Now make a motion?
Yep.
All right, I move that we increase this annual sum from 15,000 to 18,000
A second.
For 5 years.
for 5 years.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Congratulations, you guys.
Yo.
The next item is approval of a utility easement agreement between the town of Farragut and Concord Telephone Company, TDS Telecom, on the town of Farragut Public Works property, Fretz Road.
Okay, Mayor, this item involves request for approval of a utility easement agreement between the town of Farragut, Concord Telephone Company, TDS Telecom. This agreement was drafted in consultation largely by the town attorney, and it specifically addresses the use of a 10-foot wide easement that would provide for an underground telecommunications line to be extended from the overhead lines at the end of Fretz Road, the north end of Fretz Road near the interstate, into the town of Farragut's Public Works property, and terminate at the cell tower compound area on the Public Works property. There's currently not an easement for that, and that's what this plat and easement agreement would address. The plat was actually presented to the Planning Commission in September, and it was unanimously approved, and the staff recommends approval of this easement agreement. It is consistent with the approved plat, and as I mentioned earlier, was prepared in consultation with the town attorney. And mainly the reason this is being presented to you is this easement agreement is because it involves the use of the town's property, getting an easement across our own property. So I'll be happy to try to answer any questions if you have any.
Mark, what is, how are they using it right now if they don't have an easement? I mean, they have a facility there.
They have a fiber line that's actually hanging up in the air at the end of the overhead utility lines at the end of Fretz Road, and this easement would allow them the ability to actually take that on and extend it underground to the cell tower site.
So it's currently in our easement anyway, but they don't have an easement granted to them.
Into the property, right, yep. It's in the right-of-way of Fretz Road at this point. What this easement would do is allow for it to legally be extended underground into the town of Farragut's Public Works property.
But when all is said and done, it really does not impact anything they're doing in our property, right?
No, it's the easement would actually be on the very north edge of the existing driveway into the Public Works property, and that's where our Public Works director had requested it be located to lessen any potential interference with anything that he may have planned in the future in that area, and it shouldn't interfere with anything. There's a very small distance between where this easement is and the actual interstate right-of-way, so there's really not any room for him to do anything on the north side of the driveway. So that's why it's platted in that particular location.
Are there any other utilities in that easement?
No, not in this easement, no.
Would it be possible to put any other utilities in that easement at a future time, or is this specifically just their easement? Are we creating a utility easement that could be used? I mean, if we wanted to run a natural gas line back there or whatever, possibly in the future.
It's only a 10-foot wide easement, and that's an answer. That's a question I don't know the answer to be honest with you. I don't think it's part of the existing language of the agreement. That would have to be revisited. Some utilities, you have vertical and horizontal separation requirements.
Right.
You also may not have the physical space to get anything else in there.
Okay, I'm going to ask a stupid question. What is going in the ground? Is it
It's a telecommunications fiber line.
is it going to be encased in something else? Is there a bigger?
Yeah, it would be in a conduit
Okay, and
to
so all of
protect
that
it.
all of that's going to go in the ground. They're going to have to put all that in
Yes,
the ground. Are they
that's
going to
right.
have to remove any of the driveway to put it in the ground?
Not
or?
to my knowledge. That
Okay.
has not been conveyed to me that they would have to do anything to our driveway.
Okay.
Mark, it appears that the line is going to be buried right under the road.
Be on the north edge of the driveway.
Edge of the driveway or under the driveway?
The north edge outside of the driveway.
That's fine. Okay.
So did I understand that Mr. Hale drafted this? There was,
From the, yeah, I did. We got a proposal from them, which was.
so is it an exclusive
Not a-
easement?
No,
And I haven't read
it's
the
a
legalese.
It's a non-exclusive easement.
So if we wanted to put something else in there, we could. So we're just
As long
basically
as we
creating a
didn't-
utility easement, which is very typical.
Interfere with their use. We'd
Right.
have to, we'd have to coordinate like
So
we
if we wanted
always
to put
do.
our telephone line underground back there, bury our power or anything else, we
We
could
could do
use that utility easement for that. Okay.
And
Yeah,
I think
we
the
wouldn't
plan,
need an
is that thing, just to answer your question, the plan is that it would be about 1.5 feet from the pavement.
From the pavement.
Yeah, that's in paragraph 6.
Early in the process, we asked Bud McKelvey where this would be the best location for this line for the easement, and that's where he recommended.
All right, thank you.
And are they, and I'm sorry to ask so many questions, I obviously hadn't read this. Are they paying us anything for this easement? Or are they paying us anything for the use of their facility up there? What do they have up there? They have a microwave tower or
What
what?
we think this is my understanding is at least that it is the way in which the three small cell towers that they are seeking to put antenna on down at Parkside that's in our right of way, at least this is my understanding, that this is how the feed from those antenna get to the equipment over on Fretch Road through the fiber optic cable. If you ask me more than that, I can't answer you. It's over my head.
So the equipment on, here on our, so they have equipment on our property? Is that,
There's a cell
There's a
tower.
cell tower site over
Yeah.
which
there.
they lease from us,
Which
right?
we get-
That's what I'm asking.
Well, whether
They
we
don't.
get into this, I'm not sure that this entity leases it, but we have a lease with an entity that they must have some sort of sublease arrangement with
Okay.
to be.
So I understand we're paid pretty well for that.
Yeah, we're.
We just renegotiated
Yeah.
that this past year. Yeah.
Okay. And they got a wire hanging back there now that's dangling from the trees and running along the fence post or something like that, and they're just wanting to put it underground.
Well, they don't have this is a new line,
Okay.
and what I think Mark was talking about is they've got the line up Fritz Road ready to bring across and connect in,
They just wanna
and
make
they've
the
been
connection,
waiting on
Connect the
us.
dots.
Yes, they've been waiting on us to get this done so they can put it in.
So this is what, they need this to do the what's going on Parkside.
That's my understanding.
That's correct. I talked to TDS representative today, and he confirmed that this is part of that project.
Okay.
So they're tied in with Verizon then?
I'm not sure the ultimate, how all of that works when it comes to the telecommunications industry, but I do know, obviously, this is a TDS line, and this fiber optic cable getting to the cell tower will then help them be able to provide service to those small cell towers that they're trying to do in Parkside. And they're running quite a bit of fiber as well along Parkside. You can see them on the Knoxville side of things right now, putting the fiber in for the 3 towers they're going to do in the Knoxville side, and then they're ready to go for the part in Farragut.
So this is just making life better for everybody, right?
If you have cellular service in the Parkside area, yes, it will. It will. You know, we, as part of that conversation we had at the workshop with Larry Perry, as cellular service moves up to the 5G and who knows what else in the future, you're going to see a lot more of these small cell towers all over the place in the next few years.
Well, I have no more questions.
Any more discussion?
Move to approve the utility easement agreement between the Town of Farragut and Concord Telephone Company, TDS Telecom, associated with the installation of an underground telecommunications line on the Public Works property at 731 Fretz Road.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Next item is approval of TDOT agreement for improvements to Union Road.
Good evening. Yes, this is an agreement that was in your packets for, it's a TDOT agreement for development of the project to improve Union Road from Hobbs Road to Everett Road. You'll recall that our current budget, we currently have $400,000 in our CIP for design of this project. Back in the spring when the board was going through discussions about the CIP and setting aside money for this, I didn't speak up a lot because it was still kind of up in the air at the time. But we've been working for a while to obtain federal funding for that project. Back last year, we were able to persuade TDOT's planners to identify Union Road as a collector as opposed to a local street on the state planning map. That makes Union Road eligible for federal dollars. And once that was approved, we went to the TPO and requested federal funding, and it was agreed to amend the current TIP to include federal funding for the design phase of the road. So that has all come to fruition now, and so I'm very pleased to bring this agreement to you tonight. It'll be a substantial savings to the town. The project, well, currently Union Road is about 15 feet wide, has no real shoulders, no pedestrian or bike facilities. Our proposal would be to improve it to two 12-foot lanes with bike lanes, curb and gutter, sidewalk on one side, and greenway on the other. There will also be some improvements to Hobbs Road. Wouldn't be quite a full reconstruction, but the idea is to improve the whole route between Kingston Pike all the way to Everett Road. So the federal funding is set up on an 80-20 cost share. It's 80% federal funding, 20% local funding. Currently, our estimated cost total $4.5 million, which includes $400,000 for the design phase, $500,000 for right-of-way, and $3.6 million for construction. That's a little bit better map. It's an aerial photograph, still a little hard to follow, but well, this is where we are. Staff recommends approval.
So our share of that would be 20% of the $4.5 million or $900,000. So I
Well,
understand.
currently, only the design phase is funded through the TPO. That's the $400,000. I have verbal assurance, but I'm very confident that the new TIP, which will fall in the 2017 to 2020 fiscal years, will include funding for right-of-way and construction. So our cost would be 20% of the $4.5 million total.
But initially, right now, it's 20% of the 400,000.
20% of the 400,000.
Well, I think this is fantastic,
So do I.
and I'm excited about this. Questions, and if there are any more
I
discussion?
have a few questions. I just
Go ahead.
on 12 feet lanes, is that when TDOT gets involved, is that a required minimum standard?
That is a standard.
Okay.
You can go with 11-foot lanes. I'm strong advocate for 12-foot lanes.
Well, the reason why I ask is this road is already, I mean, you've been on it. It's a speedway. It's not, to call it 2-lane lane is generous, and it's still a speedway. When we improve it, it's going to become like Kingston Pike, Part 2, is my feeling. There's parts of that,
Right.
even on the curvy parts, I'm glad I drive a big SUV because I kind of look at people like it's me or you, and my car's bigger.
They're all big SUVs over there.
It's a crazy road to drive on. Is there an ability when you're getting help from TDOT to put in traffic calming measures?
We really don't extend traffic calming to collectors.
Okay.
And to kind of address your thought on, I realize people are driving fast on that road now. And I do hear it pretty often. Well, if you're going to improve the road, they're already going too fast. If you take it from 15 feet to 24 feet, they'll instead of running 40, they're going to be doing 70.
Well, they're doing 50 already.
Well, typically what we see is it's usually just a slight rise in speeds. I would much rather have them driving slightly faster than they are now on two 12-foot lanes than what they are right now
on 12 feet of pavement. There's only about 12 feet of pavement there now, right now.
It's very narrow. It's shocking how fast people go on such a narrow road.
Well, you should be comforted to know that it will be a much safer speedway.
They will not be slowing down, but they really don't speed up that much.
I guess that's my frustration is really when it's very bad is when they come out of the turn and go right where the bridge is, because that is a straightaway, and I'm not sure if there's any kind of way they can design it to put something in that is going to slow people down, because you're going to have the farm is going to develop, and you're going to have people coming out of, there's 360 homes in Fox Run, so there's constant traffic coming out of there, and just people fly, and I just have a desire to see some kind of measure that would end up having people restrict their speed a little bit. I guess it's a frustration that.
Traffic calming islands?
Islands?
Well, I like our islands. I really do, and they're beautiful now. So it is a frustration that I wish we could address on the front end. The 4-foot bike lanes, I'm great. I love those, but then I think how safe are people going to feel riding in those bike lanes when people are driving that fast? That is a problem with bike lanes now, because people don't want to use them because the traffic on the road is moving too fast. So it's an issue that we really need to think about. I don't know if you put in barriers or you kind of put in I know you've seen inventive ways to handle bike lanes so that they feel a little bit more segregated from the traffic.
Well, this is going to have sidewalks on both sides, right?
What I was proposing was sidewalk on one side, greenway on the other.
Well, okay, yeah, but a greenway is a paved walking or biking.
That's correct.
Lane, so they'll have a safe place to ride if they so choose, and not be like the person who I won't describe using the adjectives that I feel hardly to use about the guy who was going down Everett Road the other day on a new section. There's a beautiful 8-foot bike trail there, and he is in the middle of the lane, going about 15 miles an hour, and wouldn't let anybody get past him. Scratch my head. And they say, share the road. Yes, but anyway.
Who are they talking about when they say that?
Yeah. But if it's going to, I think if it's going to have that 8-foot trail on one side, then I think it's such a phenomenal improvement to what we have. And I'm just itching to make a motion to approve it, if there's no further discussion.
Have at it, Bob.
All right. All right. I would like to be honored to make a motion to approve the TDOT contract for the development of Union Road Improvements Project.
I'll second it.
All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? I gotta hand it to you guys. You sure find the ways to get the money from the feds.
Amen. Amen. I'm so proud of you.
I've been watching this for 20 years, and I've negotiated 2 cost share agreements with developers on that road, and this is got to be one of the single most remarkable things that I have seen in a grant of this kind. I saw this contract, I couldn't believe it, Darrell.
See that tip.
Thank you.
See how I saved us money by fighting for Everett Road several years ago.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on. We have an ordinance, first reading, ordinance 16-23, an ordinance to amend Farragut zoning, ordinance chapter 3, section 9, attached single-family residential district R4, subsection C 11, to provide for a new setback provisions for accessory structures.
Okay, this item was discussed actually at 2 separate planning commission meetings. And as part of that discussion, the staff mentioned that in the long term, we really need to revisit the R4 attached single-family zoning district in its entirety, really, and try to look for ways to provide for, I guess, transitional housing options, which could particularly be important if we ever have a mixed-use town center or mixed-use neighborhood type development, to kind of be on the periphery of that, to give people the opportunity to live in an area that has a zoning district with attached and detached allowed, give it more flexibility and placement and that kind of thing. But at this time, the applicant is simply requesting to have the setback provisions for accessory structures in the R4 revisited. And an accessory structure in residential context is just something like the storage building, arbors, pergolas, outdoor fireplaces, those things that are not part of the principal building, the home on the property. In single-family attached developments, what we ask the developer to do on the front end when they plat those type of developments is basically on each lot establish a box within which the house has to fit. We call that the building envelope. For purposes of our zoning ordinance, a building is a structure with a roof, and a house is the principal building on a residential lot. Over the years prior to the adoption of the R4 zoning district, we had kind of a hodgepodge of approaches to dealing with attached single family. Those were actually approved as special exceptions in the old R2 zoning district, and they had a variety of different ways that they were platted to address where the buildings are placed and how you dealt with accessory structures. So when we updated the R4 district several years ago, we established specific setbacks for accessory structures, and we also added a provision in there to require a minimum of 400 square feet of private outdoor area, and that is basically just to try to ensure on the front end that you have for each lot an area of outdoor enjoyment. It could be a deck, it could be part of the yard, a patio, those kinds of things. And in the R4 district, similar to other residential districts, all structures have to meet the front yard building setbacks. There's some flexibility in the side and rear setbacks in R4, depending on where the building was situated in relation to other structures. But the setback requirement for accessory structures was actually 25 feet from all property lines, unless specified otherwise. There were a couple of amendments that have occurred over the past 4 or 5 years that dealt with certain accessory structures like outdoor fireplaces, arbors, pergolas, that allowed for a relaxation of that 25-foot setback. But in looking at this, when this request came to the staff, and we've been thinking about this R4 district for a long time anyway, you've got a situation where each of these lots, you can place actually the house, the principal structure, right on the property line, but then you require an accessory structure, which is smaller in context, to be 25 feet off the property line, and that didn't make any sense to us. I don't think that was really the intent of the R4. So what we're proposing in Ordinance 1623 is to actually take out the language where it talks about a requirement for private outdoor area. Our thought is the developer and or the homeowner is going to probably want to have outdoor area on their lot. I don't think that it's necessarily something we should have to regulate. And it's the reason we would like to take that out is that since it is a minimum and it's required to be shown on plats, there's been some confusion about, if I only plat the minimum, does that mean I can't have more outdoor area? And it's really something that, in our opinion, doesn't need to be regulated anyway. And then secondly, just simplify the setback requirements for accessory structures, and basically just stipulate that they can't go any closer to a side property line than the principal building. And in the rear property line, they can go to within 10 feet. That 10 feet comes from what we hold other residential zoning district setbacks to, and that's provided for in Chapter 4 of our zoning ordinance. So that would be consistent with how we treat accessory structure setbacks in other residential districts. We've also added in this ordinance some language about ensuring that as part of the building permit review process that for these accessory structures that you still demonstrate compliance with any applicable building or fire codes, because you could have an accessory structure that may not be allowed under building or fire code requirements to be placed along the side property line with the building, like an outdoor fireplace, for example, may have to be offset from the property line. So there's some language in there that requires them to also ensure that these structures comply with those requirements. So when this was presented to the Planning Commission in October, they recommended unanimously for approval, and the staff recommends approval on first reading.
So Alderman Pavlin and Mayor McGill, as members of the Planning Commission, you still feel that this is a useful and helpful improvement to our ordinance?
I do. And it brought up the discussion of looking at our ordinances and the ordinances that we probably need to address probably the next year when we're looking at the work program for next year. R3, R4, R5. R5's not even used. We're not sure, we need to figure out, address those issues. But this really brought that to shine. This is meant to be connected only, and what's the neighborhood behind us?
Park Place.
Park Place is, they're using R4, but they're single-family homes, and so they're working with a way to attach the buildings that seems kind of contrived, and we'd like to see it so that you could use R4 and have single-family homes in it. Really, that's a really beautiful neighborhood there.
It is.
And we'd like to encourage different types of housing and more. People are looking for smaller homes on smaller lots. I'm looking for a smaller home on a smaller lot. So this kind of is moving in that direction.
Mayor, do you have anything you want to say about it?
No, I'm for it.
Well, I would like to acknowledge staff and the Planning Commission for looking at ways to streamline and clarify and improve our ordinance. And I think it's a very positive thing.
Thank you.
Move to approve ordinance 16-23 on first reading.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And that brings us to Town Administrator's report.
Mayor, since we don't have another meeting in November, I just wanted to tell you about a couple of events that are coming up before our next meeting on December the 8th. One is November 28th, is the Monday after Thanksgiving. We're going to have Light the Park. We do that in coordination with the Farragut Business Alliance. It'll be 6 o'clock out at Founders Park, so don't want to miss that event when we light up the park with all sorts of Christmas lights, and we're adding even more this year, so it should be a great celebration and a great time out there. Another one we're going to have is that Thursday night, December 1st, is Celebrate the Season, and that's the event here at Town Hall. It goes on from 4:30 to 7. We have different crafts for kids, Santa Claus pictures as well. So really looking forward to seeing that, and also the Farragut High School Madrigals will be performing that night. So a couple of great Christmas time events are going to be coming up here soon, and I look forward to having as many people out as we possibly can. So that's all I have to report.
And town attorney report.
Report tonight.
Well, that's great.
That usually is good news.
Yeah.
The best news.
All right, in that case, we are now adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
I like you talking to them,
Oh,
Tom.
they don't.
These two need your signature.
Having an IT band issue